Hey, MathKook here. This video contains one of many examples in my Algebra 2 library. The rest of those examples, along with hundreds of other videos, are only available at mathkook.com. Let's MathKook it up. This question says, graph the piecewise function f of x equals x cubed minus 1 if x is less than or equal to negative 1, or x plus 3 if x is greater than negative 1. So we have two different functions here that make up our f of x. That's why it's called a piecewise function, and they're defined on different intervals. So let's go ahead and bring up a graph here, and we're going to graph one at a time. So let's start with the top one, x cubed minus 1. So let's go ahead and bring our t-chart up here. So for this one, y is going to equal x cubed minus 1. All right, so what value should we plug in for x? So we want to be really strategic here because this function here is only defined when x is less than or equal to negative 1. So I'm going to plug in negative 1 because it starts there, and then negative 2 and negative 3 because it's going to the left of negative 1. So really important. So negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. So if we plug in negative 1 cubed is negative 1 minus 1, which is minus 2. Next, we'll plug in negative 2. Negative 2 cubed is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which is negative 8, minus 1, which is negative 9. And lastly, plug in negative 3. Negative 3 cubed is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, which is negative 27, minus 1, which gives us minus 28. All right, let's go ahead and graph these points. So the first point where it's going to be defined with is when x is negative 1. So the very first point is negative 1, comma, negative 2. So we go left 1, down 2. So here's our first point. So we put a point there, and it's going to be filled. That's really important because it could have been empty because it says here that x is less than or equal to negative 1. So it's defined here. Next, negative 2, negative 9. So here's negative 2, and then it goes all the way down to negative 9. So it's like right here. All right. And then the next point is going to be negative 3, and then way off the page here. So we'll just kind of assume that it's going like, going down at a pretty rapid pace here. And remember, x cubed graph looks like this. So this is your x cubed graph. It looks like a kind of a squiggly, I call it. So this graph is going to look like this here, going down to the left forever. All right, so that's the first part of our piecewise function. Next, we have x plus 3. Do we know what the graph of that is? It's a line. So this we expect to look like a line, and we're going to start at negative 1 as well. So let's bring up a xy chart for this graph, and we'll say for this one y equals x plus 3. So since it starts at negative 1, I know it's not defined here, but it's really important. You still want to plug in negative 1. It's just going to be an empty circle. And the reason why is because it's defined at the values right next to negative 1 on the right, at like negative 0.999. It is defined there. So that's why we start at negative 1. So we'll do negative 1, and since it's greater than negative 1, we'll do negative 1, 0, and then 1. All right, that should be plenty of points. So if we plug in negative 1, we get negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. 0 plus 3, which is 3. And then 1 plus 3, which is 4. All right, and we know it looks like a line, so that's plenty of points here for us. So negative 1, 2 is right there. So that's going to be an empty circle, really important. So we have our empty circle there because it's not defined, because it says x is greater than negative 1. 0, 3. So 0, 3 is up 3, so it's like right there. So we put a point there. And then next we have 1, 4. So we go right 1, up 4, which is like right there. So we put a dot right there. All right, and then we know this is a line, so we just draw a line going up and to the right here. So there's our graph here. So this is, notice it's a piecewise because it's like kind of like a puzzle piece. Here's your one puzzle piece, and here's the next puzzle piece. And this function here is the x cubed minus 1. So I'll go ahead and write that here. So this function was the x cubed minus 1 function. And then this one up here was the y equals x plus 3 function. And they're each defined in their respective domains here. Hey Kook, if you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. For unlimited access to all of my Algebra 2 videos, visit mathkook.com. Thanks for watching.